Barnes. Mr. Barnes, can you give us an update on what just happened inside the courthouse?
So we had a full hearing, and the government was unable to produce any evidence that any person in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the world has ever been harmed by any product of Amos Miller. That means they've had all these years to investigate. They've been able to cross-check every pathogen that exists unknown to man. And at the end of it, what they come up with is that not a single consumer of his products has any complaint against him. You're talking about millions of products, thousands of Americans, and all of them uniformly, all the ones that testified, almost 400 people signed statements under penalty of perjury that they desperately need what Amos Miller provides for their health, for their family's health, for religious and politically expressive purposes, for things that are supposed to be protected under the Constitution. The only credible expert witness testified that she thought there was no risk of any harm from Amos Miller's products, and that in fact they were of critical benefit to people, not only those who testified, but to those who haven't yet had the joy of having products from Amos Miller's organic farm. We're going to figure out whether, are you as a farmer allowed to make your own food? Are you allowed, the state testified that they don't even think you're allowed to make food without their permission, eat food without their permission, purchase food without their permission. If they don't, you're not even allowed to do it on your own farm. In this case, they've been rationing food, telling Amos how much he can eat, how much he can feed his own family, how he can't even feed his own pigs. That's how insane it's got. It's got to the point the state of Pennsylvania thinks they should have a complete monopoly on all food everywhere. And if it's in your fridge, they can come in and take it, steal it, destroy it, because they didn't give you permission to eat it first. That's what this is about. And we're going to find out how much the court considers those issues and whether or not at least giving some relief to this punitive injunction that right now is crushing Amos Miller and is putting people at risk of real harm because they can't get the food they need from him.
Now, where did this end? The judge said the public needs to leave. What happened there after that, and has the judge reached the decision?
The judge was hopeful that the state would have some proposal of resolution, but they don't. The state has been clear all the way through. They demand that it's their way or the highway. That's it. And they said that they would never let Amos, if he accepts a raw milk permit, they will not let Amos make any yogurt, any kefir, any colostrum, any of the smoothies, any of the cream, any of the butter, all things that people testified to under penalty of perjury, some of whom traveled here long distances to get here to testify, who said they have to stay alive. So the state of Pennsylvania was unwilling to agree to anything. And so the judge said he hopes to issue a ruling tomorrow. We're hopeful that the judge takes into consideration everything he heard, and at least gives some relief from the stringent nature of the current injunction. But we'll find out. It might have to go to higher levels ultimately.
So if the judge grants injunction tomorrow, Amos is not allowed to sell any of his raw dairy products?
That's correct. If he continues the same injunction currently in place, it's one of the most punitive injunctions ever issued in the history of the country. And so right now, Amos Miller is not allowed to make raw milk products. He's not allowed to deliver them. He's not allowed to give them away. He's not allowed to feed his own family unless they give him advance permission. He's not allowed to feed his own pigs unless they give him advance permission. That's how strict this current injunction is. So hopefully the court at least modifies it so it's not as punitive as it currently is, but we'll find out.
Is it possible for the state to pursue action in criminal court, or is this the only avenue they have to try to shut Amos down?
Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has never pursued this path ever. Historically, the path the legislature set out was you basically give somebody a ticket. It's called a summary offense. And then they escalate to a second summary offense. And if you keep committing offenses, then maybe it escalates to a misdemeanor some years. But all the court cases have consistently said you cannot prohibit someone from making food unless it is adulterated, unless it is dangerous to people, unless it is deceptive. To date, the state had every opportunity, more than 2 months, really 20 years of spying on Amos Miller, to put on evidence that what was the worst evidence they had about Amos. And they had almost nothing. I mean, literally. I mean, they said there was E. coli. Their own test said there was no E. coli in any of Amos Miller's products. So maybe there's salmonella. Maybe there's something else. He came back negative for all of those. They found a small amount of unidentified listeria that was related to a different farmer's product simply being temporarily stored at Amos Miller's organic farm. We separated those out, and as the expert testimony said, the independent tests show that there was no pathogens of any kind in any of Amos Miller's product once independently tested. The state has been hiding this evidence from the world. The state has now twice lied to courts in telling courts one thing when the truth was something else. They knew they had test results in January 5th that before they went and asked for this injunction, but they hid that information from the court. They knew information when they got their search warrant based on withholding information from the court. And their excuse was they didn't look at that part of the file. If you dig into PDA's files, what you will find is the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture joking with other lawyers and personnel about putting Amos Miller in handcuffs and taking and foreclosing on his farm. That's who the PDA really is. We have food recalls every week, every day in this state. PDA does nothing about any of it. Instead, they want to run a small Amish farmer out of business who's never harmed anybody, who has the best safety record of any farmer in the country for the last 20 years. We have to ask, should the PDA even exist as an agency? It's time for the legislature to look at what's going on. The judge said maybe the legislature needs to get involved here, and they probably do. Now, hopefully the court takes into consideration the constitutional issues implicated in this case, which is the court's job, but the legislature does need to wake up. Why are we spending our taxpayer dollars harassing a small Amish farmer who makes food that people are begging to have, whose lives depend on it? Well, I mean, what is the idea of PDA's ideal way of food is like plane food. Dude, anybody in their right mind pick a meal from a plane over a meal from Amos Miller's table? Nobody would. Everybody would pick an Amish farmer over any of the crap PDA tells us is good. So there's a serious problems. This case highlights it. The only question is, do they make Amos Miller a martyr before the rest of us wake up and fix the problem?
Why is the PDA joking about making Amos Miller the handcuffs and taking his farm?
Because that's the mindset. The PDA, well, most of the PDA people either work for corporations now, will work for corporations now, or will be working for corporations down the road. They want. I mean, we have gone right here in Lancaster County, heart of dairy country. We're losing 20% of our farms, dairy farmers, right here in Lancaster County every decade. Another 20% are going to be gone in another 10 years. This is while the PDA is in charge. While the PDA is in charge, dairy farms are in danger. While the PDA is in charge, your child's health is in danger. That's the reality. And what Amos Miller presents is people can get the benefit of an Amish lifestyle without even being Amish. And what do they get? They get to see what the Amish are. The Amish are healthier, happier, and live longer than the rest of us. And a big part of that is a lot better food than what the PDA wants. People want food to